friends. My name is Charles D. Smith, and I'm a host of the show, former New York Knicks. And do you know that they won the 2026 NBA championship? I'm so elated about that. I'm also elated about our guest today, Jeff Jones. He's an MA, LPC, CRNC. He'll talk about those acronyms. But more importantly, Jeff has used his personal and professional experience to deal with family addiction challenges. The name of his company, the Family Recovery Solutions. And if you look at his URL on the bottom, it's thefamilyrecoverysolutions.com. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, Jeff, I know you're a professional of the year just on one basis alone. When I read your background and saw what you were doing, the whole world has got to bow down to people who want to and can deal with addiction, especially within families. You're not just dealing with one person with addiction. You are dealing with the entire family. It's like they have the addiction because they're going through it with that one person. And when that happens, there's a lot of emotional duress there. There's a lot going on that you have to take on, stay calm. I said you had the patience of Job. You have to stay calm and you have to deal with all of it. So first of all, before we get into it, how did you get into it? How did you start your business?
Yeah, well, I was born into a family with addiction, and I, as a child, I saw all these confusing patterns. And as an example, my grandfather, who was the alcoholic in the family, showered more love and attention upon me than anybody. But my mom hated him. And there was something that happened between them that she never spoke about. So it was not safe for me to love my grandfather in my mom's presence. That's an example of some of the secret dynamics that happen in families with addiction. And it isn't anybody's fault,
Right.
per se. It's like this is the way our society or culture, how we've been trained to think about addiction, specifically addiction in the family.
Very, very interesting concept. It's interesting from the standpoint of how people get addicted. Now, there's all sorts of addictions,
Yes.
Jeff. So talk to us about what type of addictions you work with.
Yeah. So probably, 12 years or so ago, I was focusing mainly on just alcohol, because that has been a primary addiction for, decades and decades. And because the core of my program has Dr. Joan Matthew Larson's information. She wrote the book 7 Weeks to Sobriety, which she has alcohol biotypes. So that's why my focus was primarily alcohol. The reality of it is any addiction in the family has similar dynamics. Of course, the substance or process for the individual with the addiction may be different. The dynamics in the family, there's so many similarities.
Sure.
So, and every family has its unique aspects. Not every situation is the same by any means.
Right. So as I mentioned, if one person, I don't care whether it's cancer, diabetes, drug addiction, alcohol, when it's really bad, it impacts the entire family and everybody needs help. Everybody needs help. So can you talk about how you go about dealing with someone who has an alcohol addiction and then you have to deal with their family members? How do you go about doing that?
Right. Well, I have tried to start with the family while the individual in addiction is still in active addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's different than the norm. The norm is just to stay focused on that one person with the
Sure.
problem and try to get them better. And when they're better, everything can go back to normal. That's a myth,
Sure.
quite frankly. But so starting with the family and focusing on what the family could change, which they can't change their loved one. None of us can change another person. The only person we can change is ourselves. So,
Right.
and there's so many things that family members can do. And yes, once it gets to severe addiction and crisis over and over again, it's you have to focus on the crisis, of course.
Right.
However, my offer to families is to reach out for help well before there's crisis.
And what does that look like when you say before there's crisis? When should they be reaching out?
Ideally, so here's Jeff's ideal world, and I'm laughing because this doesn't happen very much at all. But that is so for young parents with kids who are in middle school, that would be optimal. And actually, my addiction nutrition mentor, Christina Vasilok, she has the Academy for Addiction and Mental
Mm-hmm.
Health Nutrition. A couple years ago, I was a part of a group with her, and we actually created a prevention program for middle school or high school or both, and it started with just the parents. I mean, one part of it was the parents really understanding what was going on with their kids' behavior, like
Mm-hmm.
what was behind the behavior, what was happening
Sure.
in the brain and their body, and specifically um, nutrient deficiencies and neurotransmitter imbalances in the brain. So that's my ideal world, and that doesn't really happen. However, I think it is very possible for when a family sees a loved one who they know is in addiction and it is getting worse, and there may be an event like the need to go to a hospital or something like that. That's a huge warning sign. And
Mm-hmm.
so oftentimes the individual will say, I'll deal with it myself. Don't worry. They'll say all the right things. The family will trust that. And the individual with the addiction can't do it. Their brain isn't letting them do it. It isn't a personal thing like the person is just lying. Of course, it looks like that, but there's more to it.
So before I ask you the next question, uh, your professional degrees, the
Oh,
acronyms.
yeah.
What are they? MA, PLC, I think I said CRNC. What are they?
Yeah, what does all that mean? So I got a master's degree at some point in my life in couples and
Okay.
family counseling, and that really inspired me to I mean, once you get a master's degree in something like that, and there's a couple years to become a licensed professional counselor or therapist, you have to take a lot of continuing education, and all of the continuing education I took was courses in families, courses in addiction, and eventually trauma. And so that became decades of learning more and more and more, and slowly putting pieces together myself.
Sure.
And the academic stuff is great, but there's more to it that the academics doesn't really touch. And like
Hmm.
I mentioned, Joan Matthew Larson's process is, bionutritional repair. Um, that has been swept under, you know, the rug largely.
Hmm.
A lot of people, when I say biochemical repair, they may not even know what I'm talking about, because it's like now the language, initially I think it was helpful to reduce stigma. Addiction
Hmm.
is a family disease. Um, yes, initially it reduced stigma, but that language now I see it sending a message that is more of a problem for families, because
Hmm.
I don't see them as having a disease, because there's quite a bit of research out there that when there's addiction in the family, or really any stress in the family,
Right.
there's stress induced family roles. So family members go into different roles, one to try to manage the problem
Hmm.
outside of them, i.e. the addiction, and the
Sure.
other is to manage their own nervous system and their fear inside themselves.
Mm.
And those stress induced roles, addiction in the family doesn't give the message that these are stress induced roles. It's like the family member can think, oh, I have a disease. And if I have a disease, then I have to go to my doctor and get a prescription for
Hmm.
something. And I'm like that. Like a disease, from how I understand it, is a deficit with an organ in the body. Like with diabetes, it's the pancreas.
Sure.
And, you know, um, so the family has the disease. Oh, that's that one person with the addiction. You get rid of them or fix them up, and everything should be fine.
Right.
It's just, uh, I don't like the implication. I don't think that messaging really inspires families
Right.
to reach out for help early.
Right. Um, you know, Jeff, how does the addiction start? We're I know that's a broad question. It can happen a
Yeah.
zillion ways, but I'm just asking you as a professional if there's certain synergistic things that you've seen that can kick off an addiction. Um, and then the follow-up question to that is, once they're in it, how does it mature? And it just,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happens in the brain, in the mind, where it just
Yeah.
matures, and it's like they're going down this rabbit hole and it
Right.
gets worse and worse. So, I know it's psychological, but can you answer those
Well,
two?
the psychology is a part of it. So one, I want to, you know, um, put the metaphor out there, the three-legged stool. And this metaphor comes from
Okay.
my addiction nutrition mentor. And the three-legged stool, the three legs are, the one is biopsychosocial, the other is spiritual, which a lot of programs I think do a really good job with. The one that's missing is the bionutritional leg of the stool.
Nutrition.
And so you know if a individual who's in treatment or after treatment is also has a recovery coach to be able to address the imbalance of nutrients in the body and the imbalance of neurotransmitters in the brain, it's like the recovery process can be a lot easier. And I've had conversations with medical doctors that worked in treatment centers. And when I used that language, what they said was, oh, we don't want them to feel too comfortable, because if they felt too comfortable, they would leave. And I was like, oh, so that's
Yeah.
huge. And your question, there was so much in it.
I
So
know. I know.
The first thing that I heard you say, Charles, was how does an addiction start?
Right.
And there's so many contributing
Yeah.
factors.
Yeah.
And, so one is the genetic. Um, and I want to say genes are, 30 to 50% contributing factor max.
Mm.
Like decades ago, we used to think, oh, my grandfather was an alcoholic. My dad was an alcoholic. Therefore, I'm an alcoholic and there's nothing I can do about it. And that is not true. We know that's not true right now with neuroplasticity in the brain, meaning the brain can change.
Right.
But we need
Right.
to be doing, we need to have like a daily protocol. We need to be doing things on a regular basis that can help that brain change. So
Right.
our daily life can help the brain change. And what we put in our mouth can help the brain change, or it can contribute to the brain staying the same. And the metaphor that I
Right.
like to use with the brain is like deep tracks in a muddy dirt road. Represents habits, behaviors that have been done over and over again, or a substance that has been used over and over again, or actually both a substance and a behavior.
Deep
But
tracks.
it's done over and over again, and there's these very deep ruts in the road. And so if you're driving a car or truck down that road, it's going to be easy to fall into those ruts. And so when we change the brain, it actually we actually get out of those ruts. And some of the bionutritional healing, which could be amino acids, some supplements, food, real food, not some of this ultra processed food, but real food, and protein. Like, I would say, if a person weighs 100 pounds, cut that in half, 50. So 50 grams of protein every day minimum for a 100-pound person. So that's kind of a guideline. But there's so much that the person can do. And I know, maybe 10 or so treatment centers that actually use the bionutritional approach. And I don't know how many treatment centers there are in the country. And
Mm.
I'm sure there's some that I don't know about,
Right.
but
Right.
I did intervention stuff for a number of years. I was on a team with some people, and I have, been in a number of treatment centers, talked to people in treatment centers, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
I just went down a rabbit hole there, Charles. Help pull me out.
No, we needed you to go down there to figure out what was going on down there. But the you know when a person, and when I'm asking you the question, Jeff, I know you're talking about alcohol, but when I think about people in addiction, there's uh, there, there's addiction to food, there's sexual addiction, there's addiction to pornography, there's all sorts of addictions. And
Right.
so I'm just focused on that key word. And I just wonder, how does someone mature and it just gets worse? Is it exposure? Is it,
Yeah.
that's what I'm curious to understand.
So one of the yeah, you bring up a really good point. What I hear in that question is the word addiction. What I know is that even today, there isn't just one definition of addiction. There's
Okay.
there's many, and
Okay.
like many centuries ago, we thought we could cure addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And like with shaming and flogging, and that was, I think, the Egyptians. And then they thought that would cure the addiction. The Turks thought that they could cure the addiction by pouring molten lead down the throat of the drunkard. That was the language. And I think, oh my God, that would kill someone or give
Right.
them lead poisoning or whatever. And then I think it was the Greeks. They put amethyst stone, embedded amethyst stone in clay mugs or steins that they would drink wine or beer out of, with the thinking that when that alcohol went over the amethyst stone, they wouldn't get drunk. So, and like we hear these stories and go, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Right.
And today, like not that long ago, addiction was thought of as a bad choice. Now it's a disease. And because it's a disease, insurance companies can pay for treatment, but addiction treatment has become medicalized.
Yes, it
And
has. Yeah.
even with like heroin, the medically assisted treatment is considered best practices. What that means is um, methadone, morphine, Suboxone is needed to detox that. And
Hmm.
I've helped people detox heroin with an amino acid, dephenylalanine. And I probably shouldn't even have mentioned the name because it's a process. It's not just a few capsules.
Sure.
So the idea now, it's like, okay, there's an addiction to a chemical like heroin. So, hey, we have this other chemical. It's called Suboxone or methadone or morphine, and
Hmm.
you can take that to get off of this. And so and that saved people's lives. I don't want to dismiss it, but black and white thinking about solutions is problematic. That's
Mm.
So I don't know if I'm answering your question or making it more complicated or
No, you are. It's just but when you answer the question, it leads to something else. It's like, how does it become normalized within that person? Like all of a sudden, what they do, they drink alcohol. It's no big deal. I can handle it. What are you
right.
talking about? And everything is in their brain is normalized. I'm fine. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know in my life there wasn't, up until a couple decades ago, there wasn't a party that I would be invited to and go to where there wasn't alcohol.
Hmm.
And so the idea is everybody should be able to monitor themselves. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not really the case. One, with the abnormal genetics that I touched on a little bit, but then also alcohol can actually be a solution to problems that people are having, temporary problems. I mean, alcohol can also kill you, but if
Right.
you use alcohol to deal with a problem and it's helpful early on, then our brain can, go, I want to remember that. Do it
Right.
again.
Right. Right.
Do it
Right. Right.
again. And it becomes the solution to every problem I have in my life. And then the underlying trauma, or what's known as adverse childhood experiences. Um, the more adverse childhood experiences someone has, the more tendencies they are going to have, not only to addiction, but many diseases. And the shorter their lifespan potentially is going to be. So,
Mm.
us, you know, all of us developing a healthy lifestyle, and healthy on numerous levels, mental, physical, spiritual. That is awesome for us. And when one person does that in the family, and it ripples out to other people having their own practice with mental, spiritual, physical health,
Sure.
it's like the whole family can develop what I call, family rules or family
Hmm.
structure that can actually buffer or shield stressors that, we have a stressful life. We all have a stressful life. There's some pretty crazy things going on in the world. And if we
Right.
don't have some way to filter it and make meaning of it and support other family members,
Right.
then we can be more vulnerable, to say nothing of the genetics, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of pieces. I'm just quickly touching on
Right. Right. And
them.
we're time is flying, and I have so many more questions, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, which one should I ask? Okay. The cover up on addiction, when the person begins to cover, like you said, their tracks. They
Yeah,
create these
yeah,
tracks. They want to cover them. They don't want you to, and they
yeah,
don't want to. It's to them. It's a new track every time. They don't see the same track happening over again. They lie. They manipulate. They um, cause so
yeah,
much disruption. They create distance with close relationships.
yeah.
Seems
So,
like that kicks in.
well, it definitely does. And like I was talking about shame so many years ago, shame
Hmm.
and flogging to cure the addiction, we still use shame as a way to get good behavior. And
Mm,
the language in the addiction recovery space is still quite shameful. And
sure.
so, professionals can and do, and I was trained myself to use this shaming language, and that's not helpful. That's not helpful. So,
Yeah.
of course, if I'm, slowly having a problem and it becomes a habit, a dependence, a physical dependence, and then if I don't have it, I'm getting withdrawal symptoms and I
Sure.
crave it, and it's like, oh my God, there's an addiction. I don't want to tell anyone. I'm embarrassed.
Right. Right.
So I'm embarrassed because the way we've seen this is like that shaming language is still present. And I know there's a lot of good therapists out there and good professionals out there
Yeah.
that they don't use that. So I want to acknowledge that side as well.
Right. Right. Well, our show is coming slowly to a close here,
Sure.
Jeff. Time, like I said, just flew right by. But what would you want the audience who's listened to this show leave with, understanding, something about you, your business, addiction?
Yeah.
Give them a few
Yeah.
things, undiscovered
So
gems to walk away with.
so one of the first things, regardless of who you are, know that there is always hope. Whether you are the individual with the addiction or at some stage of habit, dependence, addiction, which could be called mild, moderate, severe kind of thing, there is always hope. And it requires you reaching out. So that's with the individual. For family members, family members who have watched a loved one for decades do this over and over again. Family members, well, individuals do this too, but they create a story about that individual with the addiction, and they believe that story, and so many things that happen reinforce that story. And
Mm,
the fact is that is a one story, it's a perspective, and for them to have hope is to be curious about that story, and maybe there's more to it.
mm,
And so, just as you said when we started this podcast, it isn't just about one person. Everyone is affected. And one of the ways family members are most affected is what they think and
sure.
what they believe is the truth.
Mm,
So, having hope could be questioning one's own story and starting to be curious and starting to reach out for
Yeah.
different perspectives. And that could be a very beginning thing that I would like to leave everyone, all of us with.
Sure, sure. Jeff, we have run out of time. I have so many more questions. This is a very interesting, intriguing topic because addiction plagues the world in so many different ways. So, Jeff, Professional of the Year, thank you for being on the show of Undiscovered Gems. You've dropped more gems than most. So I really appreciate you being on the show and look forward to you coming back again. Thanks for your time.